Hello and welcome to another episode of I Am Dharma Talk with Rabia Ilahi. I'm Rabia Ilahi. And in every episode, we hope to inspire, inform, and enlighten you. And most of all, hopefully help you feel a little less alone. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, this is so amazing. Today I have my amazing sister from another mother, Ayesha Lakhani. You are a therapist, licensed professional counselor, and the most amazing part, you're also a play therapist.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So hi Ayesha, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for coming. Tell me a little bit, because I met you in grad school like years ago, and we were both studying psychology. But you went more into the play therapy route. Tell me a little bit about what play therapy is.
So play therapy is a specific mode of therapy that we use for early childhood education children. And it's child-centered, which means basically the therapy revolves around where the child is and what it is that they need to work on. It's play because a lot of younger kids don't have the mode of communication verbally necessarily, and so the toys in the room are designed to kind of be their mode of communication.
Okay.
And so kids will come in, and it's really interesting because they come in and they do their work and they process what they need to. It doesn't necessarily mean that they do it verbally, but just because they can't communicate verbally, they figure out other ways to kind of do their work.
I see. And so what drew you to play therapy? Because I know you work with adults also. What made you so passionate about play therapy?
So when I first learned about it, I mean, if I'm being honest, I was really scared to work with adults because when I started this career, I felt really young and I didn't think anyone would take me seriously. And so I gravitated towards children because I could relate to children, and I thought they were super easy and fun to work with. And so as I learned different modalities of therapies that we use with children, I was drawn to play therapy because I loved how the process worked, and to be able to watch kids do the work that they need to do with me just providing a safe space for them.
Oh, nice.
So it's fun. It's fun to watch the process happen.
And so what kinds of things, what kinds of things do the kids play with? Like,
so a lot of the themes that come out generally in play is generally like nurturing themes. So they'll cook meals, or they will play with babies, and they will want to give them baths and change diapers and change their clothes. A lot of them can be, so sometimes kids will play out animal play, so they'll identify different animals that represent different family members. So if there's conflict going on at home, or mom and dad are fighting, it's interesting how they identify what animal will be which parent or which sibling, and then they kind of play that out as well. A lot of the kids like to draw too, so they do forms of art therapy, and we'll have them express their feelings, and they express their feelings through color or through images. So just depends on the child, and it depends on what's going on with them.
What's been sort of the best part and the most challenging part of working with kids? Because I can't do it. I'll be really honest. I'm not good at that.
I think the challenging part sometimes feels like not a lot is happening. And so I really have to rely on feedback from the parents. So when I think not a lot is happening, I'll check in with the parents, and they're like, oh, behaviors have changed at school, and they're, we see a lot of improvement at home. And so that's the interesting part, because generally in the room, I don't see what the parents are, like the presenting problems that parents are bringing them in for. So it's either behavioral issues at school or behavioral issues at home. So I don't see that, because when they're here with me, they get my undivided attention. And that's what kids want. They want someone to pay attention to them. They want to be heard. They want to be seen. They want to be played with. And that's what I do. So so that can be a challenge, in that I don't necessarily see the specific behaviors that the parents are describing. However, when they're here and they're doing their work, and sometimes when it feels like I'm just playing with their kid, they report back that things are improving. And so that's the benefit and the challenging part for me, because sometimes I feel like we're stuck and we're kind of playing out the same thing over and over again, and yet it's reported outside that things are improving.
Do you discuss with the parents, like, oh, we're playing the same thing over and over? Do you share that with the parents, or do you interview them?
So what I do is I have an initial session with the parents to get a better idea of what's going on with a kid at school, at home, and then what's going on with the parents, you know, because a lot of times parents don't realize that their behavior or things that are happening at home are impacting their children. And so I'll get a clear picture of that, and then generally I'll meet with a kiddo probably around 3 or 4 times, and then I will check back in with the parents and do another session with them to kind of see where we are. Has progress been made at home? And of course, throughout the weeks, I'm also keeping in touch with them, because if the parents can tell me if there's something that's happened at school during the week or something that's happened at home, sometimes the kids will come in and play that out. And the play won't necessarily make sense to me, but if I have that background, it will make more sense to me.
I see.
As to what they're playing out. So I do like to stay in constant communication with the parents, so that way I also know what's going on and what the kid is trying to process in play therapy.
And do you ever speak with the school teachers, school counselors?
Yeah, so it depends if the parents request that or if I feel like it might be beneficial. And there are some kids that I'll even go and do school observations with to kind of see what behaviors we're talking about at school, what the teachers are struggling with. So if that's requested by the parents or if I feel like it will benefit, then I will definitely do those things.
I see. How do you know, sorry, the question was right there at the top of my head. Oh, yes. So when you find out from the parents or find out from the kids that maybe something's going on with mom and dad or mom and mom, dad and dad, however it is, how receptive are they generally, the parents, to modifying their behavior? Do they accept it or?
So I find that parents don't realize the impact that their behaviors have on their kids. And so when I bring that to their awareness, then yes, they are receptive to it. However, I don't always know how quickly they are to change those things. So there is an awakening for them, and the hope is that they are changing those behaviors. But what I do find is that parents don't realize. They say, like I've heard so many times, oh, well, we argue after the kids go to sleep.
Yeah.
And so what they don't realize is the kids are still absorbing all of that energy, you know, the tension in the home. And kids don't have a filter until they're 9 years old. So that energy that's in the house with other siblings, with parents, if I have a lot of moms who are pregnant, and so it's that transition of welcoming a new baby into the home and working with families on how to do that with the kids that are already present and what that transition is going to look like for everybody. So trying to help them prepare. Parents are usually open to that because they're not thinking in that way.
Yeah.
They're really focused on our child is acting out at school, hitting other kids and not listening. And so it's helping them see a bigger picture of where those behaviors might possibly be coming from.
I see. Now, the other thing I know about you is that you are also an energy healer.
I am.
Like myself. How do you bring that into your work with kids, if you do?
So I do. So there are some kids that I do chakra healings on, and I think it's amazing because I can feel their energy. And what's fun for me is that because they're so young, only certain chakras have developed. And so as I'm kind of working with them through their process, I'm also helping them develop and clearing that space for their upper chakras to then develop more clearly, which a lot of adults don't have the opportunity for because we're not aware. And so, and also explaining to the parents how kids absorb all of that energy, they, again, don't realize that. And so they're a little bit more open to having their children participate in chakra healing. And so it's interesting, too, to kind of see the immediate changes. I've worked with them, a couple of boys, like 9-10-year-old boys, and they are so hyper because they're so energetic. And then they get on the table and you can immediately see changes in them, like their voices, they speak more softly, they can feel the energy flowing inside of them, so they want to know more about it, which is interesting because boys are boys. They're very different from girls. They're not necessarily feeling creatures. And so when they can feel and then they can ask questions about it, they really enjoy it. And then I have one little kiddo who goes and he goes home and he was like, I'm going to do energy healing on my mom and my dad and my dogs. And
oh, sweet.
And so it's very sweet because he's learning and he wants to know more about the different stages of healing. So it's fun. Not all parents are on board with it, but however, the ones that are, they can also see that change in their kids.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay, now another question has gone through my mind. What part of, what's it like for you when you're doing an energy healing on a child?
So it's interesting because I'm so used to being able to feel energy at every level. And I have to remember that with kids, only 1 or 2, maybe 3 have been developed this far. So it's definitely a different feeling than when I'm doing it with adults. But I also remember and go through the process of helping them do activities to sort of maintain that. And the goal is just to maintain that openness from like their root to whatever chakra they're in, and hopefully continue that as they continue to develop and grow, and those upper chakras are growing as well.
I see. So now working with kids all the time, do you look forward to having kids? Or are you more like, is it good birth control?
So it's interesting because what I love about kids is they teach me so much. And you can sit in a room with a child because they have no filter and they're so authentically themselves and free that it's such a good reminder of how we as adults need to have more play in our lives. And so while I love working with kids and hopefully we'll have my own one day, it is interesting to have that thought that being present with these kids is so easy. And I noticed that a lot of even therapists that I know struggled to be parents, you know, with their kids, just like we we have our own relationship issues. And so, or, you know, business issues or whatever. And it's so easy being on the outside, helping someone else create a better life and a better form of how they can improve their lives, that we forget to take our own advice. And so I feel that same way with kids, is when it's someone else's child, it's so easy for me to see, well, they just want to be heard. Like, you're just not paying attention to them, or they want more attention, or to do all these things. And so in my mind, I'm like, I feel like I would be the best parent on the face of the earth because I know all this stuff, and I've had the privilege of having all these kids teach me so much stuff over the years I've worked with them. And yet, I also realize what a big responsibility it is. So yeah, I don't know.
And I guess how much effect adults have on kids.
Everything has such a huge effect on kids. You know, where they go to school, the teachers they have, how they get along with other kids, and they're such malleable creatures that influence is such a big thing. You know, and so you want them to be around big families and around people that can provide them with different things. And sometimes we forget that. We're so busy with our lives and running from school to extracurricular activities and trying to be involved in different things, that it's like you also want to actually spend quality time with your kids. And I think one of the things that parents don't realize is that you don't have to spend hours of quality time with your kids. They really just need 15 to 20 minutes a day. And if you can provide that for them on a consistent basis where they have something to look forward to, you'll probably see a lot of those behaviors reduce. Because a lot of that is attention seeking. They want your attention, and you're busy cooking dinner and taking care of other kids and coming off from your own day and your own work, that you think that you're giving attention to your kiddo because you're cooking dinner and helping them with homework, but it's very different. And when you can give them that undivided attention for 15 or 20 minutes, I usually say before bedtime when everyone's kind of winding down, it will make such a huge difference on your child.
I guess we do forget, especially, and here's something that I've talked about before on this podcast, which is the role of electronic devices and, you know, tablets and video games and all of that stuff, that we're slowly, you know, kids are not growing up with that look in the eyes, interactions. Tell me what you know about that.
So I know that parents are living very stressful lives, and giving your kiddo a tablet or turning the TV on or having them play a video game is a great babysitting tool, whether it's when you guys go out to dinner so mom and dad can enjoy dinner while kiddos are occupied, or when you're just at home and you need a breather. But it's also very important to monitor, because kids are getting so used to their lack of social interaction, their lack of social engagement, which is increasing the amount of social anxiety that's created in kids. They don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to interact with people. And so it's really easy to get lost and create sort of an avoidant personality or an avoidant attachment when you don't have to worry about communicating face-to-face with somebody.
And being in like real time with that.
Right.
I see. Yeah.
And so not that not social media, tablets and all of those things are necessarily a negative thing, but it certainly needs to be monitored for a period of time. And probably the younger your kids are, it's probably important to wait, you know, as long as you can until they're a little bit older, and then do more educational stuff on there. And of course, set a time frame for it, you know. And generally my rule of thumb is save it for the weekend. So it's kind of a treat, but yet we're still doing something educational. And I would limit it to 30 minutes to an hour, you know, maybe Saturday and Sunday or Friday and Saturday. You know, it also will encourage you to create play dates for your kids so they're out active, running around, being outside, which our kids don't have.
True.
You know, anymore. And that's really important in terms of social development for them as they get older.
So anyone who's listening to us, what is something that they could do today, either with their own kids or with, if, you know, there's so many babysitters and older brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews and all of that. So what's something that someone can do today just from such expert advice?
So probably the easiest thing to do to implement is, I would say, one-on-one time with your kiddos right before bed. Not only read them like a book before you go to bed, but ask them how their day was. And ask them open-ended questions, not how do you feel? You know, good, happy, sad. You want to say, what were the good things about your day? Tell me 3 good things that were good about your day. But you also want to know what they're challenged with. So are they struggling at school? A lot of kids are afraid mom and dad are too busy, or teachers don't listen. You know, so you can always ask them too, like, did you have any challenges? Were there any things that upset you in your day? You know, but you certainly want to go to bed on a good note, on things that, you know, and maybe you can figure out what you want to focus on for tomorrow. You know, so a couple of things projecting into waking up in the morning, so that way you have an idea of, okay, what are we going to set our intention for today? And you can do that within 15 to 20 minutes before bedtime. And your kiddo will look so forward to that time, and they will start to think ahead of time, because they'll be excited to tell you about their day and what upset them and what they're looking forward to doing. And I think that little bit of time will make such a big impact, and it's something very simple and easy that you can do.
And it costs nothing.
And it costs nothing.
Yeah, except time. Many kids and many grown-ups have grown up in single-parent homes. And I get asked this question because I work a lot with couples, and they'll say, oh yeah, you know, we're staying married for the kids, or we're staying together for the kids. When the youngest is 18, then I'm out of here, or whatever, you know. And I have not read up on the latest research on what is good for the kids and what isn't, but I'm curious what you find to be sort of a general rule where two-parent home versus one-parent home.
So I've really learned from my kids too, and working with couples and working with adults. What I know is staying together for the kids is not a good idea, because what are you teaching your kids about being in a healthy relationship?
I see.
In my mind, I think, yes, while a breakup and breaking your family apart is a very challenging thing, it's also something that can be done in a very healthy way. And the outcome of that is that we never think about how happy we would be separated. So how mom might be happier separated, or how dad might be happier separated. And then how the kids can see mom and dad happier separated, and possibly with a new partner that makes them happy. And then there's an opportunity to teach them that this is how healthy relationships can be created. And mom and dad don't have to be fighting, they don't have to be at war. And that transitional process can be very healthy, although painful. But a lot of things in life are painful, but we don't stay in that pain. We manage to find a way to overcome it and create something different and possibly something better. But we get stuck in this idea of the guilt that we feel about breaking up our family. And again, I go back to the tension in the home that's created. Impacts your kids, it impacts the mother, the father, the animals in the home, it impacts everybody. And so this simple idea of what would life, just to even imagine it, what would life be like if we were separated and living in two homes? I know kids and parents don't want their kids bouncing back and forth. Again, it's a transitional process. Kids are very resilient, and they would be happier going to two happy homes than being inside of one miserable home.
Or even like a cold, there's very little talking, there's very little connection. And what you said earlier, that because kids don't have the same access to language yet, that they are just energy and feeling the energy, and so parents may not be fighting, but if there's a lack of connection, kids are feeling that.
Absolutely. And then they grow up in that environment thinking, no, this is how relationships are supposed to be. Because generally too, when you're unhappy in your relationship, you're also not out socializing or having play dates or doing things where there are examples of other healthy relationships where your child can be like, oh, wait a second, like they get along really well, and that's not how my home is, so what's happening here? It's, you stay in the context of the tension and the unhappiness, and they grow up learning that this is how relationships are supposed to be, and they don't gain or create an identity of what happiness and healthy connection looks like.
I see. So that's good for me to know, to be able to, because I think that on my own level, but to know from you that it is better for the kids to know what healthy relationships, what happy relationships look like most of the time. I recently saw an interview that Jay Shetty did with Novak Djokovic, a famous tennis player. And Djokovic said that one of the things that he really believes, which I thought was beautiful, is that the kids he has were brought here to be teachers for him and his wife. And I thought, it just helped me look at my daughter as a teacher for me, even though like I'm the grown-up and the therapist and all of that, but for all the stuff that comes up for us that we have to face, because now there's someone calling us out on our shit all the time, and I can see how they've helped me be better as human beings.
So it's interesting as we go through this process, right? So we're a kid and we go through this period of being free, and then all of a sudden, like around 4th grade, 5th grade, we start to realize, especially girls with our bodies developing, it's like we start to realize like, oh gosh, you start stepping into that awkward stage, and there's a realization of, I'm different, I'm not developing as fast as that person, like people are going to make fun of me and tease, and all these things that happen. And so that's the shift that our freedom starts to go away at that point, because we become very self-conscious. And as we grow up, that's where we start to become less playful and less free, and step into more of judgment and how other people are judging us and looking at us. And then we go into adulthood where we step into, well, I have bills to pay, and I have to have a job, and I have to finish my education, and and so you forget. And so all of a sudden then you have a child who needs you and forces you to step into a different realm. And kids just want to be paid attention to. And they basically want to tell us, like, what you're doing is not that important, and it will be here tomorrow, but our time right now is invaluable. And a lot of parents and a lot of adults, period, it's just like, oh, let me finish this, or oh, I'm almost done, and
oh gosh, I'm guilty of that.
And so it's like, but you know what, you don't get that much time with your kids. Before you know it, they're up and they're grown, and as they get older, they don't want to be at home with their parents.
No, they don't.
They want to be out, they want to be free, but you also want to, if you're not doing it yourself, it's hard to instill that in your child. The freedom and the play and that innocence that they have, it's maintaining that for as long as possible. And I think that's why kids come into our lives, is because we get so far on the spectrum of being an adult and we forget how to have fun. And so when they come into our lives, it's like, it's supposed to help us realize there's a lot of things in life that just aren't that important. Or that don't need to happen right now. And we put a lot of emphasis on, I think a lot of adults put a lot of emphasis on our purpose and our value of, I have to go to work, and then I make this much money, and then this reminds me that I'm valuable, that I'm needed at work. And sometimes, when our kids are independent, we don't feel as needed, And so I've been having a lot of conversations about the empty nest syndrome and how your child growing is very similar to a death. When someone is ill, you know that they're sick and that they're dying and that they're not going to be here for very much longer, but it's still a shock when they're not here. Very similar to, my kids are getting older, now they're driving, and now they're juniors and seniors in high school, and they're going to go away to college. And what I realize parents are failing to do is adjust their lives as their lives are changing. They're staying very similar to specific roles to help their lives function when their kids are younger, and what works for them. But what they're not doing is growing and changing as their children are growing and changing.
Oh, so that's why there's this whole adulting thing.
Exactly.
Which I had no clue about. So yeah, good point. All right, so one of the final things I want to ask you, because I really want to take you home with me so you can monitor what I'm doing. I want to talk to you about how we discipline kids. And this is something that comes up for so many families and may even vary by culture and all of that. But when it comes to disciplining kids, what do you advise parents to do?
So I think the biggest thing is what I've learned from kids is, and adults, is everything has a bigger context. So we have to identify maybe why the teacher or the principal is calling home and saying your kid stole something or hit another child. Okay, so not a great behavior, but we have to go deeper as to how did our child get there? What was going on? We have to look at the bigger context of what's happening. It's very easy to be punitive, and children should definitely have consequences for their actions. However, we have to have an understanding of where those actions are and those behaviors are coming from. And when we can do that, then there might be a deeper issue. So sometimes parents end up punishing because we look at our children as a representative of us. And if you're out in the world and you're doing something that is not a representative of me and basically you're embarrassing me, I want to punish you. Right?
For making me look bad.
Exactly. Which has absolutely nothing to do with why the behavior happened, where it came from, why the child is acting out. And if you don't figure those things out first, punishing them is not going to have a benefit to them. So when you have an understanding of all of those things, and you can talk to your child and help them problem solve too. It's like, okay, so do you understand why you did this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we do get angry.
Mm-hmm.
So what is a better choice? What choice can you make next time? And you have to teach them rather than punish them, because if you punish them, they get used to punishment. It's not going to change the behavior.
Yeah, because there's no understanding or learning.
Exactly, on both ends, from the parents or from the child or from the teacher, right? So teachers also get a very snapshot of what's going on with the kid. They don't know what's going on with 30 kids' lives at home.
Yeah.
And so when the kid comes in because they didn't have a good night's rest, and so they're cranky and they're tired, and so they're pushing and they're hitting and they're throwing tantrums and all of that stuff, there's a reason that's happening. Same thing when teachers are putting kids in timeout, you know, is that really appropriate? Do we actually know why this kid is behaving this way? We also get into a kick of, because I told you so.
Yeah.
And when I say do this, you should listen to me. And again, I mean, imagine when we're tired as adults, we want our kids to be self-sufficient in that moment. We want the imaginary kitchen to get clean and kids to be put to bed, and for you to be able to rest. And you don't want to be bothered because you're tired and you know that you can't function for anyone else in a healthy way. It's no different for kids. We don't know everything that's going on at home. You know, parents aren't coming in and saying, okay, I had a fight with my husband last night, so kiddo heard us arguing and yelling, so beware if they come in here and they act out because we didn't pay any attention to them last night, so they may be seeking more attention today. You know, so those are the things that we have to be aware of. So what happens at home and what happens at school is the same thing. We have to dig a little deeper.
Okay. Well, I could spend an hour alone just talking to you about ways of disciplining and all of that, and what's helpful and what isn't. But we may have to save that for another podcast.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to take us an hour, I think. One of the things that I really focus on in I Am Dharma Talk is purpose and meaning and being on your true path, which is what I think of Dharma, you know. And I'm going to ask you that question, that what do you think is your purpose and what brings you meaning in your life?
So, being here and doing this work, it's funny because I've been having this conversation a lot lately, because people are like, are you working hard? And you know, a year, 2, 10, 15 years ago, I would say, oh yeah, I've been working super hard. I'm working 2 jobs and I'm trying to gain all this experience. And now I can say I'm just working because I absolutely love what I do. And I feel very honored and privileged that people trust me to help them overcome the struggles that they're having in life. So when I wake up every morning, when people talk about being able to get up and go do something they love, that is my life every single day. And so it fits me finding my purpose in this. And it's been a very interesting journey for me, and how things have kind of come together and how those patterns have repeated in my life, and planting seeds very early in my life that I had no idea were going to help manifest into what's happened now for me today. And so I'm very lucky, blessed, and privileged to be able to wake up every morning and come and do something that I love, work with people who I love, and again, very honored and privileged to be in this space. And I feel like every single person that comes into my life, every new client that comes into my life, I am so open to, what are they here to teach me? Why are you here? And what am I supposed to learn from you? And so every day is a learning process for me with every person I interact with.
Oh, that's beautiful. Because you do work with I know we talked mainly about play therapy today, but I want the listeners to know that, I mean, you work with everybody.
I do.
You know, you just happen to love little kids.
I do, and I'm not afraid to work with adults anymore. I think I've grown up now, and I'm not afraid.
I'm the one afraid to work with kids. Like, can you talk? I don't understand. How can our listeners and viewers find you?
So I am on Facebook and Instagram at infinitecounseling.com, and that's also my website.
Infinitecounseling.com.
.com.
Okay.
And I there's many ways that you can work with me, and I would be happy to hear feedback from anyone that has any ideas or thoughts about the things that we've talked about today.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, so we'll have the links in our show notes, and great. Well, full disclosure, we work together, and you are. I think I get so happy when I see you. And do want to take you home in my pocket. Come home with me. And I know how much you love what you do, which is, I think, what makes us good at whatever we do is when we love it. Anyway, so thank you guys so much for listening. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at I Am Dharma Talk. And we would really appreciate it if you would review us, subscribe, if you wherever you listen to podcasts, and maybe even recommend us to your friends and family. Your support means a lot to us, and we take it very, very seriously. So thank you, and we'll see you next time on I Am Dharma Talk.